Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord. Get out. Get out. Christ is Lord.
Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thugged, aka White Boy Deep Voice, aka another racially ambiguous graper. Appreciate seeing everybody in here. Looks like some people seen the title, they've seen the thumbnail. Obviously, yes, we're going to talk a good bit about Milo and his gaymaxxing. Everybody is gay in the conservative movement. This is kind of a newer development, but it's also one that we have seen before. Milo becoming once again the face of the alt-right, or someone who is the most willing to have a safe conversation with on those ends. Appearing on Tucker Carlson and Tim Pool in rapid succession. I believe that what happened in, 2022 is happening all over again. I could be off on the years actually a little bit, but appreciate seeing everybody in here. The intro is hard. Pause. Josh Vandernoord will be in here in just a minute. He's actually waiting backstage. Just want to cover a couple of things before we get him involved. And it's going to be quick. It's going to be short. And I do apologize for missing from the last time. Again, if you're also not subscribed, make sure you smash that. And also smash the like button as well. It helps tremendously. But getting into it, though, we're going to cover a few different things. Obviously, Nick Fuentes and the Candace Owens and now roping in Ian Carroll has reached a new peak. We're going to be covering that, obviously, with Josh. Also going to cover that later on with his Groyper report. But covering and going rapid succession, because it is going to be a little bit quicker, because we do have the Groyper report coming on in a little bit. I want to cover these real quickly. I'm not going to put any of them on the screen, but we're just going to cover them in short, rapid order, just so you guys know. Top of the hour, 3 stories that should concern you a little bit. First one is the fact that 40% of those earning over $300,000 are now living paycheck to paycheck. This has been a continual rising kind of trend, if you will. And in one particular, it was originally reported that it was a lot of people over 100K, or just a lot of people who were in the 6-figure bracket was struggling with paycheck to paycheck. It looks like that has now moved to over $300,000, and 40% of which, now in terms of how many people is that in the country, it actually is a lot more than you think. And specifically the millionaires in the United States of America, I believe it is now 1 in 10 Americans are actually millionaires. And I think this is a stark kind of insight and look at a reflection of the value of the dollar, the American economy, and the affordability crisis. One of which that Donald Trump says is a hoax, or rather a Democrat scam, I think was the exact verbiage he used. Second thing that's concerning that should catch people's attention is the fact that Virginia Giuffre's multi-million-dollar fortune has now gone missing, and that does include the $12 million abuse settlement payment that was paid out by Prince Andrew. So there's some concern there as well, but it looks like, as from what I'd read, it's a potential that an ex-husband is involved there too. So kind of curious of that. Her entire final 2-3 years of her life was very, very dark. And so I do think that is something to be concerned with, particularly her involvement with Epstein and the denial of such. And then the last thing is something that I wanted to talk about on, I believe it's on Thursday or actually Wednesday, but I'd forgotten about, but we have 2 actual reports. Now this one is actually from Kalshi, that college graduates now have the same job finding rate as a high school graduate. So per Kalshi, a college graduate or a college degree is utterly worthless in comparison to a high school GED or high school diploma rather. Now this is off of the back of the Business Insider report that said that applying to a job in 2025 is the statistical equivalent of hurling your resume into a black hole. These things obviously are in stark contrast with what you get from messaging from some of the major cucks in the entire arena in the right side of politics, from people like Gates Garcia, which is, it's always been hard. You just got to keep trying harder. We're the guys who we're the generation being born in the good times. It's like, no. You have it entirely backwards. Actually, you are the trust fund babies. The baby boomers are the ones who are born in the good times. We are the first generation that's coming up through the beginning of the struggle, the beginning of the bad times. It's going to continually get worse. I think the degradation of American society cannot be understated, and we have no off-ramp, if you will. We have means to kind of stop the bleeding, but it looks like we are going to continually go in this direction so long as immigration is not pulled back, so long as Christ is not put back at the number one value in this nation. And so that is unfortunate. I'm not black-pilled, but it is to say I don't think we have seen the end of how degraded the American society can become. And I say that specifically because we have yet to see like the full extension of where AI is going to take this. And I think in particular, not even just in the micro application of like how everyday average people might have AI on their phones, AI might be used at workplaces, but also though in particular, the macro use of such, and in particular like thought crimes, and very close to the kind of 1984 George Orwell Psychopaths, if you're familiar with the anime, this kind of reading that the AI will basically be able to predict human behavior better than we can. And thus that proposes the kind of principle or the theory or fear that AI ultimately may begin programming us because its programming and predictability capabilities are so strong. So let's just say there's a lot going on, there's a lot bad, and it's just in contrast to what the conservative kind of messaging is that affordability is not really a big thing. And I think Nick Fuentes had a great point on this, which is that the prices and everything aren't going down, it's that the rate of inflation is slowing. There's a big differences there with what is going on. And also another admission too with people like Zohran Mamdani, part of the reason why they're winning elections is because not only do they say, no, I'm not going to go to Israel, but attached to that, and I think also just as valid, was how much Zohran talked about affordability, making things free. Now, the way he was going to go about it, obviously being socialist, communistic, majoritively so, but at the same time, though, it doesn't matter. This is the message that people want. They want to hear that they are going to have cheaper, easier times buying groceries, and I think people are quickly not going to care in which ways that is done. And also, not to mention, those are three quick ones. The overwhelming thing with the Somalian aspect with Donald Trump is the fact that I've now seen multiple posts that have gone viral. I think one in particular was a Somalian who was pissing on the Hollywood star of Donald Trump. And the second one is actually a recorded message about a minute and a half long talking about how his biggest regret is that Donald Trump's not going to live long enough to see Somalians take over the United States of America. And if you're asking me at this point, I would rather we declare fully armed conflict with Somalia than Venezuela, and just so we can get any pretext to get these people out of this nation. So with that, right before we get Josh in here, one other story I wanted to talk about. Well, two things. First would be, if you have not seen any elements of Aaron Siri destroying the big jab at one of his recent conferences, I would encourage you to do so. I don't know too much about Aaron Siri particularly, but he does have some great pieces, and he had a great couple clips coming out of the conference, and specifically about vaccine safety and efficacy. One thing I would add on this too, that I noticed pretty hardcore, is the X algorithm has been having some extreme kind of issues going between, trying to kind of figure out what content people want in their For You feed. Now, part of this is because of advertisers screaming at the top of their lungs because they are just a bunch of raging pussies. But the other element is the fact that they want to protect from censorship elements, like, the Israel lobby, obviously, and other factions that are pouring money into these things. No joke, I watched 2 minutes of a vaccine kind of talk from RFK. I scrolled for like 3 straight minutes on X, and every single post from then on was only about vaccines, whether it was hepatitis B, whether it was about, the COVID jab, whether it was about, any kind of trial vaccine. They were bringing up stuff. I was seeing posts from like 3 years ago talking about vaccines made 20 years ago. And so it's to say that the algorithm is real. And I think there is a lot that falls out of probably people's mainstay kind of viewing just based on the way that these things are. Now, if I say this as somebody who uses X as their primary, I typically use New York Times and other sources as secondary, but that is concerning because the average person might not even be aware of just how strong the algorithm is. The other thing that I want to spend time talking about was the Moderna clinical trial omission of the child death. And in particular, you'll find an FDA report. I believe Megyn Kelly spent some time talking about this on her most recent show, where the FDA brought about, 10 deaths that were, not talked about and not included in there, as Alex Berenson was reporting. Alex Berenson reported that there was a Moderna vaccine child death that happened in their main clinical trial, not in the first batch, but in the second batch as they were preparing for the Omicron variant, that they omitted. But this is actually illegal. And so they got around it by actually only registering and reporting this number with a specific EU drug regulatory agency. And I say all of this not to go into this fine details and all of the specifics of all of this. And what I would encourage, if you're not familiar, you should familiarize yourself with just how nefarious some of these agencies are and some of the actions are happening. But I say this to say, for one, what contrasted this report was all of these different news outlets that were saying, and why this is dangerous. It was, 10 things that were reported from the FDA, new report from the FDA reveals, and why that's dangerous, and why that's bad, and why that's not good. And like every single one of these news headlines is like, and why it's not good that this is a thing, or why it's scant evidence, or we didn't get enough. And so I just say all this to you, that there are people that need to be in prison. And in fact, I would say even further, much beyond prison, whether that's just we banish them from the country or whatever other punishment you see fit beyond that. The point being is that this also fuels some of the fire with people's general discontent with the MAGA movement, general discontent with the political sphere at large, is that there are people who are getting their palms greased and who have been in these positions of power, who have abused their positions of power, who have done evil things. I mean, Fauci outright has done extremely nefarious things, particularly the story about the dogs with their tongues or the vocal cords being cut out. I just sit here and I go, like, when will the heads begin to roll? Where are the jail sentences? Where are the 25 years? Where's the life sentences? Where are the throw the whole book at these people? Without it, you can't even begin to pose that you have justice in a nation when the only justice that occurs is to the average person who's going maybe 4 miles over the speed limit. But people involved in Epstein files or vaccine, what would you call that? Abuse or just mishandling of things, or just outright just evil, criminal activities. Now we have things, potential war crimes. You have potential, all of this. And it's to say that the average person knows if they go 1 mile over the speed limit, they're going to get fucked. They're going to be paying a $180 speeding ticket. They got to really be careful. They got to make sure they don't get a second one to lose their license. But at the highest levels, you can literally violate children. You can violate, the entire Constitution, and there's no repercussions. And so I say all of this to say, until the overall movement gets a bit more with the program and gets a bit more, forward facing to the contempt that the average person faces, it's just going to continually go nowhere. This is why people are bleeding out, literally going anywhere. I will listen to anyone so long as they don't repeat the line and sit here and protect and pretend and defend and deflect all of this 8D chess from the Trump administration. It's not to say it's all bad, but it's majoritively bad. And that is to say, I don't see how we get out of this kind of general distrust of the government and all of these elements when you're not getting justice from the major elements that you need it from. Mean tweets are one thing, but actual people behind bars is entirely another. So with that, though, I feel like I've kind of ranted a good bit. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Josh Vandernoord, my favorite homophobe, who is here with us. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Introductions. And here we are. Josh
How's
Vandernoord.
it going, everybody? Happy to be here. Been a while. Well, I've actually never been on offensive. Yeah. You had me and Zeb on that one a few times. So it's fun to actually be back. I know we do Groyper Report every week, but it's awesome to be back on Offensively Accurate. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. We had a big week. Obviously, we're prepping for the Groyper Report, and I think with that though, it made it so it was hard to kind of follow almost anything else. That's kind of partly why I took the day yesterday to catch up on all the collabs that had released. On top of TPUSA event, they have a 2-hour stream talking shit to Candace. Candace has a response episode, and so it just ended up being a lot. And so I think where we can start actually some of the newest information that we're getting from Tim Pool that broke earlier today, which was the fact that somebody had approached and got on Tim Pool's property and opened fired on the compound. And I think most people, and I think I saw a post already that was going viral, I expect this too, because he had said it in his post. He said, this is what happens when you call out evil. But who was the last person he called evil? Candace Owens. And so I'm sitting here waiting for when is he going to begin to prime the idea that he was approached or attacked because Candace Owens had put him up to it, or the kind of, stochastic terrorism. And I'm curious where your thoughts at with that.
Yeah, we talked about that this morning over the phone, and I remember thinking the exact same thing where Tim Pool this week went kind of, not viral, but he was making waves by going against Candace, because right now Candace, she's on her own quote unquote generational one in the conspiracy realm, blaming Turning Point USA, Israel on Charlie Kirk's death, almost 3 months now after the fact.
Yeah.
And before we get into the who do we agree or disagree with, the timing of that is interesting. And I'm willing to give Tim Pool the benefit of the doubt and say he's probably referring to leftists, but it's one of those things where, come on, Tim, you have to understand you just called Candace Owens evil. Now you're saying this because of evil, the insinuation, it is there.
Right. I just kind of view it the same way that they do with Nazi, right? This is almost kind of like, this seems to be actually the parallel here for the right wing. And so the left, it's got a pretty easy calling card. We're all used to it. We're familiar with it. They'll call you a Nazi. The same way that they would apply like the N-word, which is another story that broke earlier today that I barely had time to look at, which I'm sure you might have seen, which is the idea that, this guy said the N-word and it's like, well, it's okay. It's okay to stab him now. You can do whatever you want. You have a legal pass to commit murder if you want to. In the same way, I feel that the right wing does this as well too. They're calling the left evil. And I think we saw a little bit of this right directly after the Kirk assassination in response to how the left was behaving, right? Dancing on the grave, doing all the celebration. Although does that, I don't think that even comes close to the similar rhetoric. But at the same time, I do think Tim will try to drag this as far as he can to paint Candace as being as much of a villain as possible. But let's go back. Let's actually zoom out with this, because I want to know, where are you at with Candace right now? Where are you at with who's right, who's winning this argument? I mean, what do you even make of the whole thing?
Right. So it's no secret, you know, we're on the Nav network together, and I sort of got my start with Zeb Boykin in this sphere doing Outside the Overton. And Zeb Boykin has made a bunch of videos, done a ton of analysis on the ballistics and a lot of the conspiracy around Charlie Kirk's death. And this is something that I wouldn't necessarily say we disagree on, but I'm a little bit more reserved about my judgment in the matter of whether or not Israel is involved. And admittedly, my interest in the story has waned a little bit over the past few months. I have not been keeping up with the Candace drama. I have not been keeping up with a lot, like beyond the surface level stuff and clips, what she's been saying. However, I do agree with, I'm sure we'll get into this tonight on Groyper Report, but seeing her response to Turning Point, giving her an open invitation, basically admitting, all right, we're forced to address the allegations that you've been foisting on us this entire time. You're welcome to come and ask us questions. And now it's all this, I'm a traditional wife and my husband won't let me. And whoa. I said I would zoom in, and now, oh, you didn't email me as opposed to posting it on Twitter. It's just very sus. And honestly, I think it's bullshit.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I was talking to Zeb now or if I was talking to you about this, but the way I kind of look at it now is neither. Like, what I didn't get from TPUSA was demanding that she show up in person. Like, that part was, and when I listened to the clip of it, Blake Neff basically says, well, he thinks it's critical. And I think he's actually being pressed by a caller, like a fan of the Charlie Kirk show, who calls in to ask, like, what is the importance of this? And he just basically says the general gist of like how, grand and great this kind of whole kind of narrative is. Like, they thought it was important that she did show up in person. And I can see that. I just don't think there's a good response if she's like, I can't make it, but I'm willing to show up live stream, why they wouldn't also facilitate that too. But at the same time, here, Candace Owens' husband hasn't been mentioned one time at all. And the one time he comes in to step her in for save her from what? From actually showing up to like what she has been dragging out with what many people find to be the most important narrative in politics right now. And so that to that degree, I'm like, she also looks terrible. She looks miserable. I mean, the whole point of what you've been doing is saying like, we're at the very edge. This could change everything. This is we could break this whole open, right? If we find like this smoking gun here, everyone will know how much the Israel lobby plays roles in politics. But I can't go because it's my husband's birthday. And then I've seen clips that have been not verified, but supposedly that's not even true. That her husband's birthday is actually in July. And there's clips of Candace saying this too. And so now I'm like,
okay, I was going to ask, because I didn't even hear that it being his birthday was a proposed explanation. I almost thought that the excuse would be, my husband is concerned for my safety, which is why he's not allowing me to go. But apparently that, as far as I know, that's not being put forward either.
No. And well, the thing is I would actually, I would grant that argument some level of credibility, not the whole like she's afraid that she's going to get shot. Like it's like that's like, dude, we're not. This is like it's not a Hollywood movie. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, Candace goes missing on December 15th. Like I wonder who it was. Like that's like insane to me. But the way I almost look at it was like maybe there is some kind of wording in a law somewhere where it's like they could get her on like some kind of actual legit harassment charges if she shows up in person, or like something like that where they could ambush her on that level. The one thing is too, is like, if she does show up in person, she has no controls over her mic generally. So like if they wanted to shut her down or whatever, they could basically like block her out and then just keep on going in like a bad moment. So there are elements like that I do understand, but at the end of it, nobody looks good. TPUSA looks like shit. And so does Candace Owens. And so there's no real winner here. And now everybody's just kind of taking strays and losing now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that, which actually reminds me, this is a point I made on Outside the Overton the other week when it relates to Arvel, where Arvel was talking about how, his return to the land operation, he was like, if you do not have a white wife, stop applying. And it was kind of funny. It's like it's about how all these like race realists all have Hispanic girlfriends. But you could argue, I would say this actually could be an effort to put it into the civil rights violation. It's like, okay, now he is in a position where if he goes on TV and he says, oh, this is whites only, that's one thing. But for him to actually start denying people entry based on race, well, then there's legal precedent to overturn it. And that could be a good point. That's a good point, actually, where it's like her showing up there, they could, and maybe this would be a little bit pedantic, but like they could fake a harassment situation. They, could
Right.
There might be some precedent there to persecute her.
Yeah. And see, so like, I'm not Jewish, so I don't understand all the ways you can like fuck somebody over with the law like that. But I think there is like, that was one of the first thoughts that yeah, there it is.
That's what I'm here for.
But that was like one of my first thoughts was like, there probably are things that I'm not even conceptualizing that they possibly could pull out. And I do get the whole thing. That's why I think TPUSA's got to come up with a better answer for like why she needs to be there in person.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's kind of a double-edged sword, where I think her excuse for not going in person is very lame. I'm not saying that there's no reason to go. But at the same time, them not wanting her to zoom in, that's suspicious too. And so it's just like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, with how it is now, where it's now she's going to live stream their live stream, she's not going to be able to ask any questions. And I guarantee at the end of this event, we're not going to have any more clarity on anything.
Right. Exactly. And I almost was thinking of it too now with like this latest development between Ian Carroll and Nick would be like, it would almost be more substantive for them to hash it out, for Nick and Ian Carroll to argue with each other about like their different theories than it would be to even have Candace and TPUSA, because it's going to end up being like, it's going to end up being some drama show. And the overall is just, again, what are we going to get out of it, right? Now that they do this. And I think Candace had once again extended and asked for the live stream. But the overwhelming thing of it is like everybody sounds crazy. And one thing I would actually add in there too would be the fact that it's like people are almost treating it as if like Nick is writing everything off. Like he's writing off everything altogether. But he's made multiple statements where he's like, I have an open mind. And if someone does present something like I'm willing to change my mind on this, I'm willing to be open to what evidence. But he keeps saying, what is the evidence? And I would also add to that too. He had a tweet, was it like 2 days ago, where he quoted a clip of Erica Kirk when he said like, that's weird because Erica Kirk, when asked about, is she still going to support JD Vance? Because that's what Charlie Kirk wanted. She gave like this super weird, like circular answer. And she basically ended with like, well, that's why JD Vance was voted in as vice president. And it's like, you didn't answer the question. What are you talking about? So I say that because obviously it gets very personal because people are nowadays with so much occult nature to everything, the celebrity kind of nature to all of this is people kind of stick to their guy in politics. And I think that's clouding a lot of people's judgment when it comes to this because they want their guy to be right, regardless of what's even going on.
Yeah. And honestly, the whole situation with Candace, with Tucker, and now Ian Carroll's kind of being brought into the loop. I'm very unclear as to like more unclear than ever on the lines in which they're drawn. Like who's a Fed, who's not. I mean, I have ideas, but this is one of those things where it's like, is Zeb's in the background. He says all of them. Is there actual like lines being drawn? Because I agree with something Nick Fuentes said on his show recently, which is there's not one grand conspiracy. There are factions that do exist.
Right.
Arguably, like the devil is behind it all, but he capitalizes on all these different factions. But anyway, besides the point.
Right.
The point being is like, where does Tucker lie in all this? Where does Candace lie in all this? We're talking about Milo here in a second. Why is he being brought forth all of a sudden? And it's just so much shit is being thrown at us. I don't know which way is up.
So that's the thing is, and I think Nick's even said this too, like Tucker almost appears to be not like FBI, Trump administration intelligence agency. He's almost like a third party, faction. Like, and part of this is kind of when you see some of the Pakistani money that he was getting, and it wasn't much. And it's not to say that that's like obviously giving him a bias, but it is to say there are some questionable elements with what Tucker has been pushing. And I think in particular, an element that I think defends Nick in contrast is the fact that I think by nature of the fact that what we're seeing with Tucker Carlson, calling gay slurs, right? Tucker Carlson was gaymaxxing with Piers Morgan. And that was clearly an attempt to sound edgy to Clip Farm. And what I think both me and you had said on Friday, and then what Nick had said on Monday, that is an attempt to begin to capture some of what like Nick's newer audience, right? Some of these new 350,000 people who just started turning into Nick Fuentes, who maybe they hear some of what he says and they're like, oh, wow, that sounds a little racist. That's a little too much for me. They hear Tucker Carlson and they're like, oh, he's like a safe version of Nick. He says all the right things, but without all of the baggage. Oh, I like this. And I think by nature of that alone, I think is proof that at least Nick is not involved with whoever Tucker Carlson's involved with. Now, is that to say is a full escape of it? And I don't think Nick's Fed at all anyways. But it is to say I think there's proof there that Tucker's clearly some level of opposition, but whose opposition? And are they the same thing as Candace and Milo? Are they all even in the same coalition? Where does Marjorie Taylor Greene fall into this? Who has she been talking to? But specifically though, go ahead, Josh. I don't want to ramble too long.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it's one of those things. I think you're right where Tucker Carlson, they're hoisting that up because I have normie, like now all of my normie friends, I've been a groiper since 2018. And for years, many of my friends had never even heard of Nick Fuentes. And I brought him up very scarcely because of how controversial he was. And now everyone knows who he is. And I've got normie friends of mine that are hardcore arguing with me. They're like, oh, I like his stance on Israel. I like his stance on like foreign immigration, but he's a homosexual. I know it is. And that's why I like Tucker better. Tucker is the safer version. And, they say, I know he is because he says dating women is gay. They get him. They put forth all of the least optical clips that like completely devoid of context and completely devoid of like any principle of charity. It sounds insane, but these people, and these guys are my friends. I'm not bashing them on them here in case they're watching, but it is like no benefit of the doubt. And like to your point, Tucker is that established literally, and Nick even brought that up. I don't want to say it here and get in case I can't, but he said the F word for the first time. Yeah. He's been on television. He's been a journalist for like 30 years or 25 years.
Right. And it's the same way that hopefully my friend's listening. He's going to know exactly who I'm talking to. But he sends me Sean Ryan links all the time. And, and I'm like, listen, dude, like, I know you like Sean Ryan, and I know like he appeals because he talks about a lot of crazy stuff. But he's a Fed, dude, and like what he obviously talks about is curated, and he's got clear kind of goals there. But it's a kind of a hard thing to lay down to somebody who doesn't see it that way. They think things are a bit more less nefarious, more black and white, more like no way somebody would do that, right? And I think that's the general kind of benefit of the doubt I think society needs to vacate. This kind of belief that people wouldn't do these things, or that like it's not as vast or as orchestrated as it is. But also to that same point, to not also attach it to like everything is this grand planned, or that everyone's all in on the same plan. And it is more of a nature of like these differing factions, these differing intelligence agencies, differing just, occult groups, satanic groups that have been around even for like hundreds of thousands of years, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of years. And they still persist to this day. They obviously, since we've been worshiping God, there have been people who have been worshiping the devil. And like to think that they did not also persist through these thousands of years in different organizations, I think is just nearsighted or very forgetful. But to move on though, what did you think about Elon Musk calling Nick Fuentes a Fed?
I guess takes one to know one. And smartest man on the earth allegedly can't figure out what to say and what not to say. This is why I almost believe that the falling out that Trump and Elon Musk had earlier on in the administration is organic, because I think that Elon Musk, I used to think that Elon Musk was like, yes, he's like slightly autistic, but he plays it up for like the appearance of it. Now I'm convinced this guy might be full blown retarded. And this is just a perfect example of that, where like, what did he say the other week? He said that like, not only are Jews white people, but they're the best form of white people.
Yeah.
And it's because they look white. And it's like, dude, just from like for all the political subtext aside, from a historical, from a genealogical perspective, that is just not true. What are you like ripping these tweets off at 3 a.m. for?
Right. Well, and also too, there was another story that I don't know if we'll get to because we might not have time. This is a story that was actually sent to me by the community. I think both a combination of House and Tix Bomber. And I appreciate you guys. They sent a story in that was about it was from a guy who was in the UK, who came to America, took a photo with like a shotgun, and then like went back home, and then like he gets arrested. And what you have though is Elon Musk, and I think it literally said that in the article I was looking at, from like the Daily Mail, where it talks about how like had Elon not quote tweeted that guy, like he may have just went to jail. But because Elon Musk quotes it and now a lot of people see it, it's like that was enough that like a lot of people were aware of it, and then he does end up not going to jail. They didn't pursue the charges, but it's insane. And I do think there is an element that with Elon, partly because he is so rich and powerful. When you look deeper into like his connections with Tesla and his actual kind of involvement there, and is he really kind of, thank you for the super chat, brother. And is he really like this kind of engineer, this philosopher, this wizard? And you find out he's much more of a face of a program. He's a lot more of a, general contributor, coordinator. And I do think with that, he probably is some level of a very strongly controlled government asset. By which department and by how and by who's the handler, unsure. But I think that much might have been a little bit obvious given the nature of his involvement with the government contracts to go to Tesla. But the craziest part with this, though, and I don't know if you saw this, was he hid not only the reply from Nick, if you went and looked at it, but then he got community noted on his own post because he hid both his reply, Chief Trumpster's, and somebody else's reply as well. Even if you sorted them by most liked, you could not find Nick Fuentes' post. So I'll go see if I can find that real quick, actually. But it's disturbing.
Yeah, and it to go off of that, it's so funny. It's political normalcy these days to talk about how the president is just like a face. The president almost has no real executive power, and there's forces behind the scenes that are really in control. Yet we don't think that way when it comes to the private sector. I mean, that is almost certainly what Elon Musk is, and probably to a certain extent Peter Thiel. Or I would argue that Peter Thiel, though him and Elon obviously have history, is more akin to the puppeteer than Elon Musk is. I think Elon Musk is more concerned to a certain extent with how he is perceived rather than the mission. I mean, and look at it, like all of his ventures are, it's like the Tesla car, the Cybertruck, these new robots, SpaceX. Right. It is all like baseline sci-fi stuff, and it is intentionally made to look alien. And I think that's really what he is about, is like being this, I almost said Hugh Hefner. Who's the aviator? Why am I forgetting his name?
The Playboy Bunny guy?
Yeah. Hugh. Zeb, who's the aviator?
Hugh.
No.
Thinking of the Wright brothers.
Whatever. But the guy who made all the World War II planes. I can't remember his name for some reason, but
I don't know who you're talking
but
about.
anyway, yeah, he wants to be this like face of the company. He wants to be like Tony Stark. Maybe that's a more modern day thing where it's like he's the face of the company, but he's also the genius behind it. Like Stark Industries is Tony Stark. That's what he wants people to think about him, but he's just a salesman.
Right. Billionaire, philanthropist, playboy. Right. Isn't that like the tagline for Tony Stark? I'll go to the super chat there real quick. It's from Filthy English Irish Peasant. It says, pack rupees or Qatari money. Pakistan is broke AF. And that was what was curious was, this is a sidebar real quick, but two things. One was not Laura Loomer, but somebody who I actually find decently credible had talked about how there was a recent $15 million infusion into Tucker Carlson from Pakistan. And that was like a week after Elijah Schaffer, Jake Shields, Morgan Ariel, somebody else all did the promotion for Biggers, which was another scam that was being routed from like Pakistan with using like the Thailand app store, like something along those lines. And like that was all just scummy. And I can't believe these people do that shit. But no, and so I found out though, this specific thing with Elon Musk, right? No evidence, no nothing. This is multiple times now he has been ratioed like this, right? I think Ian Carroll had the first major one about Israel, where like it gave birth to the meme where it was like Elon goes like, wait, what's up with the Jews? And Ian Carroll's like, hold on, let me tell you. And then the bubble just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And Elon Musk is like stuck to the side of the square. It's pretty funny. But this is the second, supposedly, this is the second community note that had to be attached to this. And this isn't a good look when in the last 5-6 hours, Elon Musk has tweeted maybe 3 times about how important free speech is. I mean, this is a clear and obvious play. Elon is not about free speech. It's about whatever free speech is convenient for whatever they would like to be done or get done. And I think more in the line and more evidence, in my opinion, that Nick Fuentes is definitely not a Fed. I think at this point, by nature of how many people are accusing him and who is accusing him, I'm going, he must be the least fed person on the planet, actually. He must be the most homegrown trailer kid from the city, never talked to a billionaire, doesn't even know what a trust fund is, must be that, right? Because that's kind of the vibe I get from it. I'm curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same boat. I especially since the Tucker Carlson fallout between Nick and Tucker, I am in the boat of Nick Fuentes is not a Fed. However, I will say, playing devil's advocate here, as I often find myself doing, those that think he is a Fed could argue that this whole thing is manufactured. Now, I don't think, there's no direct evidence of that. And I would say to even say he's a Fed to the uninitiated, it puts that thought in their head, which is counterintuitive to if you didn't want people to, if Nick was a Fed and they didn't want people to think he was, it would be counterintuitive to that, which is why I don't buy it. But I just wanted to put it out there that is a possibility.
Yeah. And then one thing I don't think I grabbed it, but Candace Owens also called Nick Fuentes a Fed. But I think that was expected. That was going to be coming. Moving on to Milo, though.
Before we move on to Milo, I don't want to hold this up. I did want to ask you one thing real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
What, and if it's too long of an answer, maybe we can save it for later, whatever. But what is your take on Candace Owens? Is she a Fed to you? Like, what do you think about her?
So
that connection?
So the thing is I think out of anybody, I think they're actually the best argument that somebody is a Fed is Candace Owens. Very specifically so. And when I say that, I don't mean it's like it's obvious for someone to see, but I think it's when you look at it in hindsight from what's been going on. I do think that, for one, I think there's been a concerted effort with her and like the Tate brothers, right, to promote them as well. I think there's kind of some concerns there with the Remaining Angels. But I'm obviously like, no, I don't care about the Tate brothers. I find them to be hilarious. I do think, though, specifically, like the way that she has kind of approached it, and specifically, it's the French angle. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like I was paying a lot of attention to politics during that era. And I'm kind of sitting here going, where did even the Brigitte Macron story come from? Right? What gave birth to this? And so when you do look at some of it, right, like I believe the one guy's name is like Xavier Hutchison. He's like the one of the few that hasn't been jailed for their journalistic work into this. And or maybe he's not currently in jail. He might have been jailed previously. But you see how long he's been doing it for. And so I guess I kind of look at that in a sense of, was this done in an attempt to strain foreign relations between France and America from some third-party nation? Right? Is there some third-party nation that stands to gain by heightening tensions between this? Obviously, in the light of everything going on in Ukraine, I think there's an argument to be made there. My thoughts on Candace overall and her kind of who she is right now in the movement, like I'm tired of it. Like I'm done with it. Like if you want my honest opinion, I'm with where Nick is at. Like give me the Burger King hat, let me, get off the plane. And it's not because she's sassy. It's because like I seriously cannot stand what feels like the most egregious profit engineering model over this content. And when I saw the initial response of her, of like, her husband, she can't go. I mean, like if you were asking me, like I'm just gonna be honest with you, like if I was in that moment and I was like the world was looking at me and I had some story about Zeb Boykin was the biggest Fed and like I got to prove it to everybody. There's no way I'm not going to that. And I don't care if I even have a little bit of fear that like they might harm me, because if the whole thing is like that's the point, right? If you're searching for truth, the only way that can be credible is if the price for searching for truth is your life. Anything less than that means you can be bought. So to me, it's like I would go, right? It's like I would go, no questions asked. I would even show up alone if they asked me to. I would try to record and have things protective on my end, but there's no way. There's no way in any light, dude, no matter how bad it might be, no matter whose birthday it was, dude, it could be her son's birthday. You would have to give that up to go there to actually ask these questions. Because if that's the point, right? Because understand what she's saying too, at the end of the day, is the accusation is that a foreign government is so over the top, lobbied and infiltrated into our nation that they assassinated one of the most beloved American citizens on U.S. soil and nothing's happening. Because if that's like the accusation, right? Then it's like, and she's proven to be true, then yeah, we need some criminal charges with that nation, right? We need to find the people here, in the states that helped and facilitate it and involve it. But I'm also sitting here like, I really don't buy it. I'm kind of pulled back to I do think it was probably, Tyler Robinson probably did do it. I know it's probably going to be unpopular for a lot of people. But I'm also at the point too, where I think at this point with the way the case is played out and the overall public nature of it, I think Tyler Robinson is going to be not guilty. He's going to get off innocently. Yeah. I think right now there's no way any sane person could argue that Tyler Robinson's going to get a jury pool that's not tainted.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that assessment. I wonder if it will get to that point where he's straight up just like let go. But I do agree with, I wanted to hone in on one thing you said before we move on. Like,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on how the Bridget McCrone thing, to me, that was the kind of thing, like I've never been a huge Candace fan. I never paid too close of attention to her. But I remember it was actually Zeb who brought the Bridget McCrone conspiracy documentary to my attention. And I remember thinking just like, who cares?
You
Like,
said Zeb did it?
why does this matter? Yeah, yeah. Well, he told me about it.
Better relax it, man.
Yeah, that's a good, hey. But
Right.
yeah, so like think about it. What if Bridget McCrone went out right now and flashed the whole world and then we all knew? Okay.
Right.
So what's the conclusion, that the world leaders are all gay? I thought we already knew that.
Right. Yeah. Right. What is it really solving at the end of the day? I think it's a great point. Like the whole idea there of, and that's kind of and I'll admit this. I was listening to a lot of Candace and Ian Carroll actually leading up to that point. And I think it was like just prior to her Brigitte Macron series. This is when I was doing a lot of Uber, and I was being broke AF. There was a lot of talk about like the 60s. I think Ian Carroll had begun doing like his State Saloon in-person performances. He was talking about, that's what he did. He did the top 10 country music. That was like one of his big presentation with State Saloon. He did like, here are the top 10 country music artists out right now. And he went through them one by one and showed how they all had satanic influences. Now I was sitting there blown away because I was like, dude, there's no way. Top 10 country, like a couple of them probably. Dude, he hit him every single one. He was like, look at this, look at this. No joke. This morning I woke up. I guess the Zach Brown band did a performance in the Las Vegas Sphere, and it's literally all they're in hell. The whole sphere is like chains of human bodies, and they're all forming these huge big links, and everyone's trapped in the sphere. Dude, it's so demonic. And
because I thought you were about to say that it was like, oh, they're like it's all fire, and I'm like, maybe, but like chained up bodies linked.
Yeah, you should. It's disturbing. I actually would recommend people would not look it up, but if they want to know, they can just type in Zach Brown band Sphere. Yeah. You'll probably see the clip.
Classic country music imagery.
Yeah, right. And so somewhere though, it switched. It felt like she was going very hard at like the satanic element of everything. Like the evil satanic element of all of it. And now it's kind of switched to a more very specific, like Israel lobby, where we've kind of moved away from what is actually true, which is there are people who worship, the Satan and Lucifer and the devil and Balak and Moloch, forgive me. And now it's more about
Baal and Moloch.
It just doesn't, I don't get where she made that flip. Or like who would even bring it to her attention to Candace. It's like, you should really cover this story. I think there's like some very strong things here. But partly maybe it was also that. Maybe she didn't realize how far it would go. And maybe there's an element to where she thought she had a hunch on something. And it is that kind of what Tim Pool said. You keep escalating your claims. You run out of spots where you can just get crazier and crazier. Same thing with calling, Donald Trump Hitler. They had nowhere else to go.
Yeah. I think I'm in full agreement.
And let me do a super chat, which was over to Milo. But this is from Cowpoke. He says, sorry, Nick lost a lot of credibility with that video about Candace. He came off like a jealous schoolgirl. He completely shit the bed on this one. And I just have to say, I disagree. I'm not saying that there's not evidence. I'm not saying that they haven't put forward anything that's meaningful. Obviously, I think the 30-6 is like the most, the alarming element. Now, what I was a little bit blown away by, maybe people didn't pay attention to this, is supposedly, and I learned this from Nick, that MLK was also shot with a 30-6 and it did not have an exit wound. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So I didn't know that. And so the reason why I think Ian Carroll kind of pushed this a bit further, now he was a bit more specific to this, and that I appreciate. So from what I understand, MLK was like shot in the face. And so like it wedged in his cheekbone or something. So it's different. It wasn't like neck down to spine. It was like just cross face, which is even more kind of insane. And I could be getting some of the details wrong, but in terms of Charlie Kirk, though, Charlie Kirk was shot, I believe, as I was saying, it's like through the neck, and then it hit his C2 vertebrae, cervical, okay? And then it crushed all the way down to his C6, then lodged. So that's more of like, and so to understand that, he's basically saying, how did it have the power to destroy all of the vertebrae, then it stopped suddenly? So I think there's a bit of an argument to be made there, too. And so I do think what we do need to see, and I would hope we would need to see this. And part of me is just kind of like, I sit here and I see the arguing going back and forth between Ian Carroll and Nick, and I'm like, just please stop. Like, can we please stop infighting for 2 seconds? Because I like Ian Carroll. I know a lot of people will say he's gay and he's like, he's good as a Burning Man and whatnot. And I might agree with that, but I do like him. I think he's genuine. He tries to be genuine. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I do think it would be very substantial to get Nick and Ian Carroll to go at it, right? Have a discussion, have a debate, let Ian Carroll lay out the evidence, let Nick kind of poke holes in it of what he finds there to be holes in. And like I said earlier, that'd be better off than getting TPUSA and Candace Owens like talking over each other on like a dual live stream.
Yeah, I would like to see that. And on the Ian Carroll thing, it did have this flavor of like, come to the club. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's not so much of why are you denying the evidence? It's like, here's our side. Come over to our side, if that makes sense.
Well, it felt desperate. I will say that. It felt desperate. And I do have to say, I do think there is. I mean, where's Ian Carroll's, bread and butter? Or where does he get his bread buttered? And I think that's a great point. I think, and not to throw Zeb under the bus, this is just kind of the way the game's played. And I think part of that, I would expect that from Ian Carroll. And he should, right? If Candace Owens literally gave you a chance to not have to Uber every single day of your life, I mean, there's probably a little bit of like, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. It's not to say you do evil things despite that, but it is to say like, there's some element of like politeness you have to engage with because you're a human being. You're not just going to like slap somebody's hand away that had basically given you a lot. And I think that's relevant in all of politics. That's why I say again, for like the 1,000th time, people take it too personal. like they get really into it, like with their guy. And it's like, I do with Nick too. Like Nick's obviously my guy, but I don't feel personally offended or insulted when stupid people say stupid things, or when somebody I like might say something dumb, or they come after my guy and things like that. Because at the end of the day, it's like, we're about winning. It's not about whose argument is right. It's about, are we winning? Are our children going to have a better future? Are we putting God first in this country? Are we getting less women bitching all the time? Are we getting less black stabbing all the time? Are we getting less Jews controlling all the time? Are we getting, like, those are, to me, the winning metrics. And so anything else that kind of falls out the wayside of that, to me, is like, I could care less. You know, it's like, leave the whinging to all of the women, right? It's like, leave that behind.
I like it, man. I'm ready. You good to move to Milo?
Yeah, Milo.
All right.
So you probably thought the same thing as me. He even posted emails not too long ago on X about this, you know, moving over to Milo. But Milo had, in a quick succession, 2 appearances, one with Tucker Carlson, one with Tim Pool. And it appears that they are once again elevating Milo Yiannopoulos to, what's the right word? Maybe paste him as the face once again as the alt-right. And he's coming out with these kind of egregious claims. That's why the title is Gaymaxxing, is because he said that, for one, I think the more explosive claim was that he concurs with Candace Owens' take that Charlie Kirk was about to divorce, or him and Erica were about to go through divorce proceedings. The second thing was that Milo said that he believes Charlie Kirk was gay, but in addition to that, he also said that Benny Johnson was gay, more specifically and very particularly Benny Johnson, and then also threw in Alex Jones is gay too. And so the way I kind of see it is also this, once again, elevating Milo, this very controlled gay and just a degen who does not belong in the conservative movement at all, to once again be like the younger, similar to Tucker, safer, like alt-right personality. So I'm kind of curious with your thoughts, this recent elevation of Milo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced. I was convinced in 2021 that Milo Yiannopoulos was a Fed, and admittedly, like before I kind of got JQ pilled, he flew under the radar for me, where I did not clock him as a Jewish person. Now, obviously, if you've seen his recent appearances, you can tell it's been 10 years since he first kind of came on the scene. You can tell these days. But my takeaway from that is, it's like, I think, as an operative, he knows the way the wind is blowing. And as a super flamboyant homosexual, we've established this before. Homosexuals are some of the most conniving, vindictive, and manipulative people on planet Earth, homosexual men specifically. And this is what they do: is, as a outspoken gay man, he inherently entails credibility on who else is gay. It's like a gay man supposedly has the best gaydar, and he is absolutely using that to his advantage. He's done that the entire time. But of course, his resurgence on Tim Pool and Tucker Carlson, what does he say? Nick's gay. Alex Jones is gay. Charlie Kirk is gay. Yep. They're all gay. And it's one of those things where it's like, look, everyone queens out to a little bit of Nicki Minaj once and again. Doesn't mean they're gay, Milo.
That's funny. Well, here's the thing.
Zeb says sounds gay to me.
That's funny. That sounds gay to me too. What I would say though is, what's curious is because he's on Tim Pool, and Tim Pool is pushing him back now. Like, Tim Pool's now in agreement with Nick.
Right.
Like, Tim's now in agreement with Nick, because now they're both going against the proposed narrative of Candace. But what you have is Milo is agreeing with Tucker, and they're all agreeing with Candace, all in agreement that it is a lot more to the Israel lobby. And so it's just insane, because here's another element of the factions. We all know Tim Pool is also a paid show. So then who are the two different handlers then? Right? If we both have the belief that Milo has a handler, and it's very obvious. So I think when you just see the basic stuff from J6 and the fact that he was given pre-warnings to all this stuff, it's like, dude, he was an informant, or he was a full-on asset at that point. And then you look at, but Tim Pool is an obvious kind of, only last one left on YouTube, right? He will always say the safe things. Not to say that he's flip-flopped at all, but I think it's very apparent that he is only concerned about money. He's not a very convicted guy, I would say. He's continually changed positions. The more I've watched him, he's gotten more conservative.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point, which is this is all chaos. And I think maybe the best argument is that maybe that Candace Owens is purely a destabilization agent. Maybe her entire goal is in line with what we saw with Project Esther, which is, and again, people need to not forget Project Esther. The one of the desired effects and desired outcomes of Project Esther is that what they'll label us as is, right, Hamas support organizations, which again is a very broad and loose umbrella term for basically anybody who doesn't toe the line for Israel, is to get them to have infighting and then exploit those fissures. And that's what I see happening right now. I see multiple camps, multiple anti-Semite camps, all arguing with each other. And and it says verbatim, the desired effect on Project S. Let me find this here. Let me pull it up for everybody so they can see it. It's going to blind people, but here we go. Right here, this section. You can see it and I'll zoom it in. Erode support for anti-Semitism by exploiting fissures within and among anti-Semites and affiliated organizations in their target audiences. We will generate strategic dilemmas across the entire HSN front, whether in the halls of academia or in the halls of power. HSN supporters and influence targets must be made to feel extreme discomfort. We will generate that discomfort. We will construct situations so stark that HSN supporters and enablers either will be compelled to change course and capitulate to our pressure campaign, or will ultimately fall and render themselves irrelevant by continuing to support organizations that support terrorism. And I think it's actually above this, where it says in their direct effect, right here, NC 23, it's a necessary condition. So the NC means a necessary condition for this plan to work. It's that these HSOs do not trust each other. And I would wager that is the majority of what we have seen happening, is we have multiple splits now, where you have all these different groups, right? Candace's group doesn't trust Nick. Nick's camp doesn't trust Nick or Candace. Now you have Ian Carroll's probably got his own kind of crowd. Tucker's got his own kind of crowd. And we have all of the splits here. And so it is to say, is this all part of the plan? Is this all in line in accordance with Project Esther?
I think that's 100% the case. And that's the point I was trying to get at earlier, is that when I said at the beginning of the show, I don't know which way is up, that is the intended effect. That is the like, okay, I'm very suspicious of Tucker. I'm very suspicious of Candace. Maybe even Ian Carroll, definitely Tim Pool, but they're arguing with each other. They seem to have different goals in mind. Which way is up? I don't know. And that is the point, is when we're focusing on, for example, the centrist right, well, what do? The centrist right and along with the hard right, well, we're just going to cause all this conflict. We're going to inject as much mud into the water as possible to get people distracted, to get people on the wrong thing. And that's exactly the point, is I think that this infighting is completely artificial. But again, that still leaves us with the question of who and what is authentic.
Right. And I think it's kind of looking at what is the end goal. And I think regardless, what you're getting with the end goal is you are getting a stronger unified front in the establishment side of like the conservative politics, right? You have like these just absolutely retarded people on planet Earth that are like, they're stronger than ever, right? They're fully on like, we are Charlie Kirk. I've heard that stupid song more than I would like to admit, but that's what I see happening. And it does feel like, well, I mean, what are some of the messaging that you get from a lot of these guys? Is we need to find like the solid middle. We need to find like, we need a, the middle majority, right? The silent majority, the middle 80%, I think is what Elon Musk says. You even have people like Ian Carroll who push for this, right? Trying to find unity. And it's like, there's no unity happening here, right? And the only way that you'll get unity is by getting the most well-read and in the know on the fringes out of the picture. And maybe that's the overall purpose here. And I do think you have fears like from people who are in like the Alex Jones side of the camp. I get posts all the time from people like Jen Goy that talk about the increasing presence of the National Guard without any deportations being facilitated. Feels like we're getting, about to have martial law announced with how much presence there is. Now, I will say in cities near me, not nearly as much, but my cities aren't as big as some of the other ones. But it is concerning because when does it stop? Where does it end? And what ultimately will we get from this at all? And maybe that is partly point of what's happening is as long as this narrative can drag throughout all of Trump's administration, his whole term, we won't even have a chance to talk about why we didn't get deportations. And maybe that's also an element here too, is to have this major broad story that people care about. But at the end of the day, it's like, even if you did know it was Tyler Robinson, or you did know, I mean, if it was Israel, it's one thing, but it's like, to get a guilty conviction of Tyler Robinson, I mean, like, how does that feed your kids? How does that get Venezuelans out of the nation, right? How does that make Somalia get the fuck out of Minnesota, right? It doesn't help anything. And so I do think maybe there is an element that it is a major, huge just distraction.
Oh, absolutely. And like it's one of those things where, you know, and we'll get into it on Groyper Report tonight, but like, it's like, do you remember when the Titan submersible happened? Do you remember that story?
Yeah, Ocean Gate. Yeah.
Yeah. That damn submarine was in the news for like a week and a half nonstop. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, what's going on? Yeah. They're not shutting up about these people that are definitely dead. It sucks, but it's been a week and a half. And they're like, well, the oxygen, you know what? So what's going on here? And it's one of those things where, you know, Nick Fuentes talked about how Donald Trump is now a hardcore anti-immigrationist. Perfect timing where his, you know, where his what's the word? His ratings, yeah, I guess you could say, are like so low, and you know, he's banning all these. It's red meat for the base, and it's basically, I would argue that is the bread, and all the stuff with Tucker, Candace, and Ian Carroll, that is the circus.
Yes. Yeah, I would most definitely agree. And I think, like, and again, you know, I think Nick talked about it a little bit. I will save that because I think we need to talk about that on TGR, not here. But the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And I think specifically, like, you know, Nick says it's all good, but we need to be in the business of being like, nothing's ever good enough. You know, I think we need to hold that too, because we've gotten so used to, and I think the party Republicans are pretty bad at this, where the moment that we get even like a fraction of what we asked for, we're like, oh, okay, we're good. We're good. He's got my vote. We're good, you know. And I think we need to change it. We need to be like the left. We need to be like, oh, that's all you did? What else? What else did you have? Oh, that was all? Okay, well, I guess we'll see what comes to November, who I'm thinking I'm voting for. That needs to be the
message should be the message should no longer be a win. A win is not a win. Total victory is a win. That needs to be the message going forward.
Exactly. And especially as we're operating from the idea or the operandus that we have less than probably 15 years. It's also concerning too, because at the same time, you can't fix a nation. I mean, like, I will agree with JD Vance for maybe once in his life. There's a lot of problems that have been decades in the making that we're not going to fix overnight in 4 years. But I tell you what, we need to have like a fully comprehensive and robust way to approach them by the end of these 4 years, or otherwise, like, what were you guys even doing? But then again, that's partly the point, to extract and continually to extract wealth, in my belief, out of America until America eventually falls. Hopefully that's not what happens, but I do see that occurring. But we are about at the end of the hour mark. I know we got to get ready for TGR. I know you probably got some stuff you want to get taken care of too, Josh. Glad it was a good episode. Where can they find you, Josh?
They can find me at Joshua Vandernoord on YouTube, also at Joshua Vandernoord on X. And you can check out many of the shows that I'm on at Nav Creators on YouTube. That's New American Vision on YouTube. I'm a part of Groyper Report with Atlas. We not just launched. We're on our 3rd episode of Real Talk coming out next week, as well as Founders, and Outside the Overton with Zeb Boykin.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming on, brother. And everybody who is here.
Me.
Yes, sir, of course. Everybody who is here, make sure you smash the like button. Otherwise, you are probably gayer than Milo. And the second thing is, too, Groyper Report tonight is going to be on Nav Creators at 8 p.m. We'll be covering a lot more robustly this overall nature of more so Nick-oriented. But again, we're going to be covering a lot of what happened in this past week, a lot of collaborations. Big show. It'll be exciting, and we'll be ready for you guys to show up then. 8 p.m. Again, make sure you smash the like button there. Subscribe here, subscribe to Josh, subscribe to all of it. And Christ is King, as always. Seek first the kingdom of God. I know this is rapid fire for you guys. I just wanted to make sure I got a makeup episode in. But deport Kash Patel at this point, hang him. Well, at this point, Yeah, he needs out. He needs fired. He needs put in jail. He needs put in prison, whatever it takes. And also, Pam Bondi, banish her to the kitchen forever. And with that, we'll see you guys later. I'll see you guys on Offensively Accurate on Mondays. Should be. And I'll see most of you guys tonight. Peace out, everybody.
Get up and get out. Get out. Get out.
I have a question for you.
Say Christ is Lord. Say Christ is Lord. Say it. You say Christ is Lord. Get out. Get out. Christ is